Lisa Schnebly Heidinger is celebrating Arizona with lots of interesting people, so you'll hear wonderful voices with new stories. Grab your favorite drink and settle in. We're celebrating Arizona, going everywhere from A to Z, and we're off.
Welcome to Celebrating Arizona. I am very excited about today's guest because we go way back, and even if we didn't, you're just a fascinating person who really loves Arizona. What is not to like about you, huh? Bob Cika, welcome.
Well, thank you, Lisa. It's good to be back. Spiritually I never left, but it's good to be back with such a close connection as you.
L- Lovely. So we go back to when I was about 6 months old, right?
I'd say so, yes.
And tell the other people who don't know this how we connect.
Well, the bug bit, the cowboy bug bit, probably 10 years earlier than that, or more. And I knew I was destined to go to Arizona, which I did, and went to school at NAU, then ASC, Arizona State College, the friendly
Right.
little college in the Pines. And I was assigned to the newly built dorm, Peterson Hall, the head residents of which were the Schnebly family with two adorable little kids, two little girls, Lori and Lisa. And I've known Lisa ever since and grown to love her more and more ever since.
So sweet. You were one of the few people that were trusted to take care of Laurie and I when mom and dad had some event.
Uh,
You must have been an upstanding young man.
you think about, one looks at around one's surroundings now, think, how could that ever have happened? But it was an entirely different world, as I'm sure several of your guests have said in the past. But it was a much more trusting world, and somehow I engendered trust with your dad and mom, and wound up occasionally babysitting and watching every Saturday night Gunsmoke.
Gunsmoke. I was trying to remember what show. And did you call him Marshall?
I did. Your father was a combination, sort of like the law west of the Pecos judge, but he was the marshal of the place, but a very understanding, knowing exactly what needed to be done in that building of what, 180 of us or 160 of us in those
Gosh
in that,
darn.
the building. But Larry Schnebly ran that place, knew how to do it, and everybody felt comfortable.
Oh. Oh, that's lovely. I don't think I've ever heard that. That's so nice. Thank you for that.
Oh,
I
you.
don't remember who it was, and I'm sure it was not you. Somebody liked to roll pop bottles down the hall late at night.
Well, I hadn't thought of that in years, but I remember
But
that.
you remember it, huh?
I either can't or won't say who it was. No, I actually cannot say, but I remember that incident of rolling bottles down the
And
hallway.
I feel like was there a sheep or some other animal one time tied to our doorknob?
That I don't
Don't
remember,
remember.
but I'm
Well, at
sure,
least you were
with
part of
a
that.
house full, and I mean a house full. That place was packed with young students, first time students. That almost anything probably could happen and did.
It was fun to somebody,
Yeah,
huh?
yes.
Now, you had an illustrious career. What was your major?
Well, it was. I think they call this. I'd like to say political science, but probably social science. And
Really?
my major really didn't matter. I'm not even sure I knew what my major was. I knew that I needed to have a college degree to go on to the next step in life, so it really didn't matter. But little did I know that
Oh,
during that 4 years of formative training, I began to realize the true meaning of alma mater. That I learned so much at the hands of the people of that college, that now university, mega university,
oh,
that I didn't realize at the time, but it layered me like a fine European tort. multi-layered of
Oh, how
sweetness and knowledge.
lovely.
And I didn't realize that until I actually left, and I thought back and I thought, geez, I'd like to know a little bit more. Where did I get this idea? And it always harked back to one of the faculty
Oh, how
and the head
lovely.
residents, I might say, who probably taught me more than I ever knew, more than I ever
Oh,
knew.
that's so nice. And so you were a fighter pilot, Navy pilot?
Navy, yeah, Navy. Actually, the distinction is finer than that, but mostly people, if they hear the word fighter, that pretty well describes the type of airplane I flew. But it was the oldest airplane in the inventory, which I also wanted. Much like trying to connect this morning, trying to avoid studiously the latest in the state of the art of anything that carried over to aviation too.
Really? And why was that? What appealed to you about the oldest plane?
Uh, Without sounding like I'm self-serving, I think I'm a bit of a romantic. I thought I should have been flying
Okay.
Spitfires in World War II at the Battle of Britain. And the closest I could come was the airplane we wound up flying in the Navy, which was a very old, but I came to love it too as an inanimate object. But I've many times I've patted it on its flanks after getting back from a trip because of its
Oh,
durability and its refusal to give up.
nice. Now, was your flight training in Arizona or elsewhere?
It was in Florida, primarily in Florida, and then we
Okay.
finished
Be-
out in uh, the base that we ultimately went to, which in my case was San Francisco Alameda Naval Air Station, Alameda. It no longer exists as an
Okay.
air station.
So that was Navy, and because Larry's father was in the Marines, Larry was at Mountain View,
Larry was
and
a
those two didn't
what?
connect. When he was in high school, his dad joined the
Yeah.
Marines and moved the family out to Mountain View
Oh, okay.
because he wanted to be a Marine in his 40s. So Larry had that experience, and you were at a different base because you were Navy?
Yes, but Mountain
Got
View
it.
is very familiar. Yeah.
How's that? You were there for what, when?
Well, I got my wings in 1960, the end of 60, actually 1965. And to my surprise, the Vietnam balloon was going up then. I had no anticipation or intention of being involved in a war, but we were one of the first out there, because of political circumstances being what they were. But I had chosen, and I once again was fortunate. It's almost like my being like Forrest Gump, in a place at the time that something happens. And for example, I chose the type of airplane I wanted to be involved in, chose the place I wanted to go, and along the way, people in authority would say, well, it's the needs of the service. You'll go where you need to go. But I got everything I wanted. I got the airplane type, and I went to the West Coast and specifically to San Francisco, and
Oh.
the squadron that I was attached to was we supplied special electronic services, as to put it euphemistically, to the Pacific Fleet. And the idea
Really?
was a year or so stateside, and then 6 months in Hawaii, 6 months back, and then 6 months in the Philippines, and then you finished your obligated 5 years of service, for the flight training.
Wow.
But in the meantime, the political balloon went up and rose higher than all that. So we went straight out to what they call in the Navy Westpac, which is the Western Pacific, that is to say, the Tonkin Gulf. So we were among the first out
Okay.
there.
Wow. And yet here you are, safe.
Yeah,
Thank
yes.
God.
Yeah. Once again,
Was
Forrest
that ever
Forrest
in
Gump-like.
was that ever in jeopardy, or did you have a pretty secure situation throughout?
No, we were in combat, and every time we flew. Yeah.
Wow. How about that? Now, I remember seeing you when I was little in Tucson. You must have visited us.
Yes, we by that time I was out of the my original squadron, and I was attached to a Naval Air Station in Central California, Lemoore, and we ferried an airplane over to Davis Monthan for
Oh, for
retirement.
crying
For the
out
what they call the
loud.
boneyard, and I took that opportunity to stop by and see my old family.
How fun. I remember that very, very
Well, so do
well.
I, very,
And I
very
don't
clearly.
remember if Bill Morrow came with you or just you came.
Just it was just I, and
Okay.
I lost track of Bill by that time. But as I've
Okay.
written down some notes here, Bill's name comes
Ooh,
up
tell me stuff.
prominently. He's my roommate and was my roommate for a couple of years at in school.
Okay, at Peterson. Tell me more stuff you wrote down.
Well, I got interested in the West very, very early on, but I think it was by design by my father, who in the late 1930s, he and a friend of his bought a beat up Model A and drove across the country, including Route 66. And 66 has become almost like an icon, not almost, it is an icon to me. And he came back with
Okay.
tales of 66, which had just been, I think, in Arizona, I think the last paved portion of 66 outside of either Ash Fork or Winslow or Williams had been completed, but he had talked also about riding on some plank roads. That might have been off 66, but
Whoa.
anyway, the
Okay.
tales of 66 and the cowboy boots that he brought back, they were a pair of used cowboy boots and a shirt from I think it was either Arizona or New Mexico. Plus his ability to tell a tale pretty well had me on the road to going west very, very early on. I mean, I was not even 7 or 8 years old when I began to realize that that was my destiny, and I think there was a
Oh.
method to his madness. Not so much that the West was beautiful, which he said it was, and it turned out to be, but that the West also represented uh, curiosity, freedom, independence, all the things, all the values that we would like to have. And I think that was what he wanted to see me develop and have developed in me by maybe being in the West. Never said it outright,
How
but I had that feeling.
lovely.
And when I was old enough to make my first few dollars, first thing I did was go out and buy a pair of Levi's 501s, a pair of which I still
Oh.
have on. Not the originals,
I was gonna say.
but I remember paying
But you're
three
you're
dollars
loyal
and
to the
ninety
brand.
cents for them. Can you
Whoa, and now
imagine
they
that?
can be up to 50
The
bucks.
original the
Isn't that
original
something?
501s, the button fly red tab things.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh. And when did you first see Winslow?
On my way west, the family made a trip out to drop me off, and I had heard about Winslow, heard about all the towns. Once we connected with 66, I think, just outside of Missouri, and but Winslow at that time, 66 passed through it as it did through Flagstaff as two
Sure.
separate
Yeah.
streets. I think it was First and Second Street. I think
It was
first went
actually second and third, but good
second and
memory.
third.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah.
one went
Yeah.
eastbound, one went westbound, and I was
Yeah.
charmed by Winslow. I had no idea that Winslow would be such a connection to me, but I remember
Oh.
that being very impressed with driving through the first time and thinking, "Geez, this is just the way I pictured it," And sure enough.
Oh. Well, you know what? I want to talk about more in Winslow, but let's take a quick break first.
Sure.
As the podcast partner of AZ250, we talk about the 250 treasures. One is the Blenman House in Tucson. Built in 1878, it's believed to be the only known San Francisco Victorian home built in territorial style adobe anywhere in the world. The Blendman family, significant contributors to Tucson's development, owned the home for nearly a century, restored and operated as an inn since the late 1990s. It offers guests a historic ambiance blended with modern convenience. So, Winslow is another reason to love you because I love Winslow and you love Winslow. Tell me a little bit about that relationship, you and the town.
I don't mean to speak illy of Flagstaff because Flagstaff was another mother. It was like an alma mater, not only the school, but I enjoyed living in Flagstaff. But Flagstaff, in the last several years that had been through, and it's been actually a couple of years now. I think the last time was when we were down in Sedona. Uh, it had become so much like California that I began to lose interest in Flagstaff.
Ah, okay.
But driving down to Winslow again, it was like I think Garrison Keillor said, "The little town that time forgot and the decades cannot improve." And I thought, this is where I
Oh,
would prefer to live. Not only that, but the physical countryside is the type of countryside that I particularly like. That
that
the
dazzlingly
rocky,
stark red.
stock red. Yes.
Did you ever go to the little Winslow house that mom's folks lived in? Were you
Oh,
ever there?
817. I've got a
Yeah,
Campbell.
you how about
How could I forget
you?
it? How could I
Yes.
forget it?
Oh, how
Yeah,
nice.
over its iterations over the years too. In fact, talking about Winslow and being somewhat stuck in time, I raised an objection, a very mild one, to the library staff. They built a new library in Winslow, as you probably know.
Yeah,
But I
I've still
really
been
like
there.
the old one, and I said,
Oh.
if you put an add on to the old one has got such charm. Why do that? And they came back and said, well, it's in a floodplain. And I said, well,
Ooh.
the last time it flooded in Winslow, I think the Anasazi were there, and they got their moccasins wet.
There was an Ed Abbey line about progress isn't the same as growth or whatever, and you and I share a fair bit of that around Arizona.
Yeah,
But some progress in Winslow was good. Talk to me about La Posada.
vaguely remember it passing through it when it was before it was La Posada. I mean, it was La Posada, but it was the division, I guess, the division offices for the Santa Fe.
It
But I
was.
got there when Alan Affelt had bought it and was rehabbing it. And I think that if I had to pay homage to anybody, any human, he'd be among them because he
Oh, how
saved a gem.
nice.
And over the years, it's just gotten better and better. And I've tried to stop every time and it's been a few years now since I've been there, stop in and stay at least a day or two. I stayed 2 days and
Oh,
then took my kayak and paddled down Clear Creek, which was a, was a
really?
was a delight. I mean that I can't say enough about that place, Lisa. It's a
Oh.
beautiful.
Did you ever get to see Grand Falls? Was it ever running when you were there?
I've seen pictures of it, and that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I love that you love La Posada. I was going to say you probably don't remember because it was Lee and Larry's wedding and they were well married and had two kids by the time you met them. But mom would have loved to get married at and have the reception at La Posada, but it was $1 a person for dinner. And there was no way that was going to happen. So they ended up with a home reception. Now, I also think of you when I'm at the South Rim because I got to see you at the South Rim. What was that for? How did that work?
One of my iterations later on in life, my last one was I was a federal ranger in the National Park Service, and we had a 2 or 3 week I think training course uh, at Grand Canyon, and once again,
Okay.
it's like Brer Rabbit. Somebody threw me into that briar patch, and I was happy to be there.
Oh, how great. Do you remember when that was?
The late '80s, or probably right around 1990.
Okay, that sounds right. Because I was then living in Flagstaff,
Yes, you are.
and Larry and I drove up to see you at the canyon. I think we all had breakfast at El Tovar together. And then I
Wonderful.
think I got to see you again during that time when I was in Flag.
I don't remember the circumstance, but I remember seeing you from across a very, it sounds like a song line, across a crowded room. And I hadn't seen you for years, and I immediately knew it was you. I don't know what it was, but I mean, the
Really?
connection was it was a very crowded, like a party or a party room full of people. And you were in one end, probably holding court and doing very well at it, as is usually as always the case. But I think that's Lisa Schnebly. How could that?
Oh,
How could I recognize her after all these years? But I did.
that's amazing to me. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was not the cutest little kid. I was a little chubby and kind of
Well,
disheveled,
it's
but
in the eye of the beholder, maybe, and you need to go see an ophthalmologist. You were a beautiful little kid.
well, I was lucky to get both Lee and Larry, and all of us just unabashedly adored you.
Uh,
That's a shared value, and I'm glad that we all got to see you over the course of years.
if if my pores hadn't dried up years ago, I'd probably be embarrassedly sweating and perspiring now after a remark like that.
And I also saw you in Sedona, and that's why we have the coffee mug of the day. Every episode gets a coffee mug from the collection.
That's
And
terrific.
I got to meet, I don't know if I had ever met Stephanie until that day, and Charlie, and your beautiful daughter, and grandkids, right? We all met at Coffee Pot.
The ones I acknowledge, you mean? Yes.
I didn't know there
No,
were others,
no,
but now we want to talk
no.
about.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, that was a delightful time in a delightful place. Sedona, as I think I mentioned on the phone to you in the past, I have little notes written down. Sedona was always a beautiful place. The physical Sedona, the few buildings that were there, but the surrounding countryside was as cathedral-like as you could get, with
Oh,
natural rock formations, natural sandstone formations. And I think I
yeah.
mentioned to you that on our trips, Bill Morrow, my roommate, who lived in Phoenix, at a time when cruising Central was a big deal. Now, Central is a little side street somewhere. I happened to look a map of Phoenix yesterday to see just exactly where Central was, and I had a tough time finding it. But
Oh, it's still a major
no, yes,
powerhouse.
I
Central is.
but that used to be the big thing. Now that was at a time when I think Arizona's population was 0.75 when my first year there, 0.75 million people. Now there are something
Really,
like
in the state.
7.5 million people in the population of Arizona. You move that decimal
Isn't that
place,
something?
it
Oh,
it took.
now when you were at Peterson Hall, when Daddy was, the dining hall was closed on Sundays, and he and his roommate RP would drive down Oak Creek sometimes and stop at. Did you ever stop at a place in Oak Creek on Sunday night?
Oh, Jane Russell's place, you mean?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, as I started to say before, they were well. We used to go to
Well,
Slide Rock well before Slide Rock was ever a park, a state park. We
oh,
used to just
how
go there for parties,
fun!
and make sure you had, I think, a sewed piece of fabric on your Levi's so you could slide down and not wear through them.
Not ruin them.
But
Yeah.
it was a beautiful place. But driving, as I started to say before, maybe started to say before, when Bill Morrow and I used to drive down to his place in Phoenix, Sedona was there, but there was a lot less of Sedona than Sedona
Oh,
is now.
yeah. Oh,
There were Jane Russell's place, whose name I've forgotten right now. We knew that. The coffee pot, I think it was called the coffee pot then, and we'd stop there for coffee.
okay.
And it was brand new, I
Oh,
think built the year before, the Chapel of the Holy Cross. Just new. And it was
okay.
way off in the middle of nowhere. Now that has
Yeah,
long
it
since
was.
changed, and I was somewhat
But
roof.
how marvelous to have seen it back then.
It
I
was
love that.
spectacular, and to be, I mean, the church itself, the little chapel, nicely
Yeah.
designed, but in that inspiring countryside. It was perfectly built and perfectly placed.
Nice. I'm glad we got to meet at Coffee Pot as well. That was another great one. I hope somehow, somewhere down the road, you and I will be able to share a meal at La Posada.
That's one of the things that's, I don't want to say bucket list because I don't want to think about that, but absolutely. And then after that, we drive up to the Grand Canyon and have an overlook
Yes.
dinner at or
Perfect.
brunch at
Oh yeah.
El Tovar,
El
a
Tovar.
beautiful
That's
spot.
a I like that plan. That's a good plan.
Getting back to that remark I made about Forrest Gump, when I was at the training session at Grand Canyon for the National Park Service, I actually learned how to rappel by
You're
rappelling off the
kidding.
side of Grand Canyon, and that's very exciting.
No.
The
Holy
the ropes that
cats,
we
Bob.
used were supposed to it could hold a Cadillac, the strength of a rope. But there's something intimidating about
Seriously.
hanging off the edge of a rope and then looking down at the Colorado River, which was probably a mile below where I was, but it was exciting.
Wow. You're the only person I know who has gotten to rappel off the South Rim. That's darn cool.
Well, all of Grand Canyon is every aspect of it. I since, once again, as I mentioned or hinted at before, the the alma mater that I didn't know was an alma mater, that is to say, my school, NAU, had bred in me an interest latent at the time in geology. And when I went back by that time, the geology flower had fluoresced. And I looked at the Grand
Oh.
Canyon in an entirely different way, and once again, a spectacular, the way you saw it the first time, you're just awed by its immensity and its grandeur. But then looking at it from a geologic point of view, it becomes even grander.
How
Very appropriately
marvelous.
named place.
Well, I love that you love geology. I don't know if you remember that there was not created, but in 1979 the Schnebly Hill Road formation became a thing
Hmm.
because it was part of that great unconformity, and therefore it didn't show up other places. And I think Larry was just so grateful that that came into being. He was a geology minor. Now, did you take that? I don't know if Agnes, what was her name, was
Allen,
still a geology teacher. Thank
Aggie Allen.
you.
Yeah. I,
So, did you take courses from her?
I took a course from her, not geology, but I think it was meteorology, as a matter of fact. But in going
Oh,
back over some
wow.
of the old, fairly recent one, I get the pine every once in a while. It's
Uh
intermittent,
huh.
but I get it. And there are some when they reflect back to the way things quote the way things were. There's a picture of Dr. Allen, Aggie Allen, in the somewhere in and around the Grand Canyon. But I had the good fortune of having a class from Dr. Allen, which put me in mind
Nice.
of several other faculty members. That
Okay. Like who?
well, there's a fellow, Dr. Tinsley, who taught history. I guess I was a history major, social studies, but very emphatic on history. I've always been interested in history. And Dr. Tinsley was he taught English history. In fact, of the two or three textbooks I still have, one of them is the textbook that was for his class, the
Nice.
History of England, and I refer to it often,
Oh.
and nostalgic nostalgia reasons mainly, but it's an interesting. It also the price of the book is interesting too.
I bet. I bet. Have I sent you on Only at NAU yet? So I did the Arizona Centennial book,
Yeah.
and I wanted to do another book, and Tom said, "Well, what do you want to write about?" And I said, "NAU." Went to NAU, said, "Can I write about you?" They said yes. I got paid to do a 2-year project called Only at NAU, and if I haven't sent you one, I will
Oh,
because you would recognize just about everything.
I'd be delighted to get it, Lisa. Delighted to get it.
I will do that. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, I love seeing you. I love talking to you. And let's figure out the whole La Posada El Tovar thing.
Is the session over already? It seems like I've just gotten to say hello. That
Well, then
that
you'll have to come back.
I very much so. There's so many more things that I could mention that you'd probably think, oh, he remembered that too. For example, going past Winslow to Sunset Crater, there was no national
Yeah.
park at that time. You just walked up Sunset Crater, and it was
You got to walk up Sunset Crater?
you take two steps, one step forward and two steps back. The ash and the way it was, but it was
Yeah.
before it was refined. And little did I notice, I've since noticed all the Native American ruins that dot that part of the countryside. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Okay. It's official. This is your first guest appearance on Celebrating Arizona. There will be more.
I look forward to
Okay.
it, Lisa. I look forward to it and seeing you
Excellent.
again.
Thank you so very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
We'd really like to hear from you about anything this show led you to think about. Write to us at celebratingaz.com. The wizard behind making a conversation into a podcast is Tom Heidinger. The music comes from Daniel Blatton, and I'm Dana Cooper.